I'm getting a few questions in the chat that I would maybe like to kick to the panel here. There's definitely a theme here around regulatory. Someone's asking, are you seeing impacts of NIMBY sort of not in my backyard? What is the movement out there to reduce complexity of documentation permit reform? I think you mentioned, Chris, about permit reform, or permit length of time. I think you mentioned it also, Tej. But then also kind of linked to that, how do we convince the government to support renewables at scale? So maybe talk a little bit about, some of the efforts that you have either been involved with or are witnessing around, permitting, NIMBY. There's also something about, are we going to see affordability for consumers challenged with the increase of, yes. I sat on the executive committee of the American Petroleum Institute, which is a huge lobbying firm, organization that really was out there lobbying every day and still is for permit reform. I know, Chris, your company and my company both lobby independently because, as Tej said, he said, I wish I could say 7 years we're gonna see this mass increase in the use of SMR, small modular reactors. It's not. It's the way it's working right now. It looks like it's going to take a lot longer. Anyway, open the door up to Tej. Why don't you take it from there?
Yeah, I think there's so many different elements around the regulatory process, and NIMBYism. I'll go back to that first part. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I've permitted and designed a lot of different facilities. I'm a little bit. I have a lot of experience in permitting waste energy facilities, and in
Mm.
particular, turning food waste into renewable natural gas. And no one wants those facilities in your backyard. I think it is incredibly important how we express, I'm an engineer, but how engineers express technical information to the public and to stakeholders. And we don't do that very well at all. We need to be better at storytelling very complex technologies to people who need to receive that message and to understand that there's a benefit to them. So working with stakeholder engagement people, I have stakeholder engagement people on staff that tell the story in a very different way than I would. I learn from them on a constant basis. We've got to be better about telling that story. I think we have to be incredibly better about telling this story to indigenous peoples as well, because that has been a roadblock on large energy infrastructure in the past. How are we involving them? I like this term that I heard at a conference last week about taking indigenous peoples from stakeholders to shareholders. How are they involving themselves in equity in these energy projects? That brings them into the projects, gives them tangible benefits. That's going to really help with the NIMBY equation of this, because quite frankly, a lot of this infrastructure is very different. It's very new and it's a little bit scary. Small modular reactors are the size of a football field, potentially. These are big. Uh, Pumped hydro energy storage systems. We work on pumped hydro energy storage. Energy storage is incredibly important, but it's big infrastructure. Football fields full of batteries with thermal risks, let's call it, that we have fires of batteries every now and then. We need to do a better job explaining this to both the regulators and to the public and to politicians to make sure they understand the truth of this. And I feel like we're just not doing enough of a good job on that. Um, I think we're getting better. I honestly think we're getting better, but it is not reducing the timelines for constructing some of this infrastructure. And that is a very, very particular concern. Are the SMRs that are being built up here, I think they spent 7 years in just permitting before a shovel was put into the ground. And that's too long for prepackaged technology.
Yeah. No, thanks, Tej. And I love how you brought up storytelling.
Yes.
And I think all three of us are engineers on here, and we probably all three have gotten better at telling our stories to a variety of different audiences and as you say, stakeholders, shareholders, real partners is what we're looking to gain. But you also, I mean, so related to that you brought up very elegantly is the community impact. And so, how many projects have we seen in our careers that have been, if not completely canceled, at least highly hindered because the community has been kind of an afterthought, hasn't been engaged fast enough or early enough or in the right way to really, become a partner or a shareholder versus just, a stakeholder that we're, a box checking type of thing. so important. And if I put myself in the shoes of a board member, that's a really great line of questioning to have on any new project is how have we addressed the community impacts? So thank you for bringing that to the table. Chris, over to you on this. I mean, you can kind of go wherever you want on that one.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna pick up. Thanks, Gretchen. I'm gonna pick up on a couple of Tej's points, and it's sort of a learning. That's what I'm gonna try to share as the theme on this one for me. So everybody knows oil and gas is easy to pick on, and there's lots of reasons that our industry has been challenged in the past. So my learning has been on working in two, and I'll give an example of two different geographies, but then two different lines of businesses, and then the similarity that's come across. So I ran our upstream operations in California, and then moved immediately to Mississippi to our largest refinery. And it was shocking. The actual, this is kind of no surprise, but the level of challenge that I found in one location and not the other in terms of the receptiveness of the I'll say the broader community, and that can mean a number of different groups. That can mean stakeholders, that can mean regulatory agencies and whatnot. But so I said, is that us? Is that the community, or is it how we've engaged? And it's a mix. So to go back to this NIMBYism thing, I really dug into this topic while I was in California, and there was a very large, I'm not going to get the correct reservoir, but the state was trying to develop a very clean new reservoir in the northern part of the state. So it would tick all the boxes of the things that you'd want, but just massive delays because the impacted community up there, of course, even though this is good for the state, people in San Francisco might like this, but the impacted folks in that region in Northern California, not a fan because they're going to lose valleys and lose things that are important to them. And then fast forward, then when I took over the new energies job, well, surely everybody's going to love this. Who's not going to love new energies? But it's the same challenge. It's if you don't communicate the story of what's the societal benefit, but then what's also the local benefit. And then I think maybe my biggest learning, and I think it's mappable to a board role when you're helping the executive team think about how to engage on any particular opportunity, even if the concern is maybe, and this is a challenge with the three engineers, even if it's technically invalid and you go, that's silly, that's not a real issue, you can't start there. You've got to start with acknowledging the concern, acknowledging the reality, and then thinking about the way to bring folks along to address the concerns, explain it in a way that's not dismissive, that's educational and supportive, and then hopefully moving towards an alignment that the projects can move forward together. Lots of learnings there. I think we're always on a continuous journey to do that better.
Yeah, Chris, just on that, I remember my first public engagement. I was permitting and designing a composting plant. And as an engineer is wont to do, I took my engineering design drawings and put them up on some easels and invited the public in and said, let's have a discussion. I have never been yelled at more thoroughly than I was in that meeting, and I deserved it. I mean, I really learned a lot, and I really love that you're talking about a learning journey because it really is. The more complex this infrastructure is that we're building, the bigger, the longer communities are actually going to live with this stuff because it's going to be around for 50 years, the more we've got to do to explain the benefits to them locally. I think that was really well put.
Yeah. No, I agree. Both of you brought up really good points there, and I would say during my time as at Shell, we commissioned a brand new polyethylene plant just outside of Pittsburgh, and that's a part of the country that used to be the steel belt and really isn't anymore. And so the on the surface, it's like, well, we built this great plant on the site of an old zinc smelter. We rehabbed the whole plant and really created a very positive environmental impact prior, and then went and built this plant. And it would be easy to say, well, we created all these jobs, and but the community hadn't had industry next door to them in over two generations, and so we have spent an amazing amount of time and energy. And to your point, Tej, it is not a simple, like, what is a polyethylene plant? Like,
Yeah.
why do I care about it? And so bringing the community in. We set up a small, um, uh, basically little pilot plant that we built really for customers to show them how we could build different or create different kinds of containers for their products. We've brought probably more of the public through there than we've brought customers, because it helps explain what we're doing and why it's important, and how this it can be created and turned into wrapping for food that goes into the grocery store, or medical equipment. And so it is not sort of I think, be happy that our jobs are there. It's a, hey, let us really help you understand what we're doing, but also let us really hear what your concerns are. Let us really listen. And so that was a really interesting journey, and I think we're still on that, in Pennsylvania, but it certainly has come along positive way over the last few years.